Decluttering our belongings is a really good way of helping us to focus on what's important in life. However, decluttering can also be a really challenging process, which I think is made more complicated by all the rules we see and hear on social media. So in this video, I'm going to explain some common decluttering lies that could actually keep you more stuck with clutter. And once you're aware of these, hopefully it will make the decluttering process far easier. So decluttering lie number one is that decluttering is about getting rid of as much as possible. And at the beginning of my minimalist journey, I used to think this as well. I used to just think I had to get everything down to a real minimal level. But the more minimalist content I watched, I realized that there were some people who just seemed to be going with an arbitrary number of items or emphasizing the number of items they had. And whilst that might be what some people want out of their minimalism, it wasn't what I wanted. And I think we have to remember that we're all in different situations. We're all coming to minimalism from different paths in life, and just because one person is happy to have 50 items of clothing, it might not be the same for you or me, and that's okay. And if you're trying to reduce your items to as minimal as possible and that's not working for you, it's likely going to be making you really unhappy, perhaps like you're failing at minimalism because you're not able to reach this supposed goal of as few items as possible. Lie number two is that decluttering only applies to physical possessions. Often we think about decluttering as being about physical belongings, and certainly that's what I thought at the beginning too. But minimalism is about decluttering things that no longer serve us, and that isn't just physical things. That could be relationships or friendships that perhaps no longer bring positives into our lives, or perhaps a career that you no longer enjoy and maybe you want to think about doing something different. And I don't want it to sound like you should just declutter your friends, just kind of get rid of them, because it's not like that. I think if we feel we have friendships and relationships, maybe we've not been happy with them for some time, asking ourselves, well, why are we keeping these friendships and relationships going? What is my fear about letting these things go or moving away from these people and towards others who actually do add something to my life? It's not something that should be rushed or that we should do rashly. It's something that ideally we should think through very carefully. Lie number three is that decluttering is a one and done activity. I thought when we did our major declutter of over 10 years worth of stuff that would be it. I wouldn't need to do any more. However, I soon realized that decluttering is an ongoing process, probably throughout our lives. It's something that's good to do regularly so that we can keep on top of clutter coming in, but also that we can review the things we do have in our lives to see whether they are still of use to us or whether we would be better off recycling them or giving them to charity or giving them to people we know who could make more use of them. Someone wrote in my comments, and I can't remember their name, so I apologize, but they wrote about how, our priorities in life change over time. The things that we enjoy or that we feel are important do change, and that might mean that we declutter things over time because of those shifts in priorities and interests. And I think that's a really good point. The things that I enjoyed a few years ago, I don't necessarily enjoy all of those things now. So there are things that I've decluttered over time because they're just not of interest to me. So I think it's helpful to go into the decluttering process fully embracing, if you like, that this is a lifelong thing, and that as we change over time, as our lives change, as our outlook and our priorities change, the possessions we have or the relationships and the friendships that we have will change, and we will need to think about whether those things stay in our lives as well. Line number four is that decluttering will solve all your problems. Perhaps people think that adopting a minimalist lifestyle will make everything much simpler and much easier, and that's not the case. In fact, I think minimalism and decluttering and that simplifying our lives takes a lot of work and effort, actually, because we're kind of swimming against the tide. We live in a culture that is all about consumption and owning more and buying more, having bigger and better possessions. And what minimalism is about is simplifying that and actually almost doing the opposite, not consuming more. So it can really be difficult to remember that and kind of ground ourselves back in that philosophy when so much around us is telling us to do the opposite. Let me know down in the comments if you've heard of any decluttering lies that have hampered your decluttering process. I'd love to hear from you. Decluttering lie number five is if you're unsure about decluttering something, that means you just need to get rid of it. And this one in particular kept me stuck. I had a lot of items that I was unsure about decluttering, and I thought, well, if I'm sat on the fence about this, I just need to get rid of them. But that created a lot of anxiety because really I wasn't ready to part with those things yet. So now when I'm unsure about something, I will put it away away, perhaps put it in a container or a bag, leave it for a month or so and come back to it. See if I actually thought about it, see if I actually wanted to use an item, and if I didn't, then it's a good time to think about, okay, maybe this thing does actually need to go. Decluttering isn't something that should be rushed, in my opinion. Certainly there have been things I've decluttered where it was very easy to declutter them because I was ready to let them go. But we have a lot of emotional attachments to our stuff, and I think it's okay to give ourselves time to consider whether we do want to declutter something. But if that's hard because there is an emotional attachment, whether there's something we can do to address that. Maybe taking a photo of the item so that once we do declutter it, we still have that photo, or maybe giving the item to somebody we know so that we're assured that the item will be looked after. Line number 6 is that decluttering items should be easy. You might see other people decluttering items with little or no problems, and perhaps you feel it should be the same for you as well. Also, you might watch videos of people showing the results of their declutter, but not necessarily showing the process of that declutter. If you want to see how awkward the process of decluttering my wardrobe was for me, and it really was uncomfortable and anxiety provoking, then I will put the video up in the card at the top, either that side or that side. Often we see the result, we see the clean lines and the clean surfaces, but we don't see the struggle in the declutter. And some people don't film that, and that's okay. But I think it's important to remember that there can be a struggle in that process. So what I suggest is go into your declutter process fully expecting that there will be some things that are more difficult to declutter than others, and that if you are unsure, put those items aside, give yourself some time to think it through, and then come back to them. Decluttering line number 7 is that decluttering and minimalism are the same thing. And decluttering is one aspect of minimalism. It's a way of achieving our minimalist lifestyle or philosophy, but they're not the same thing. For me, minimalism helps me to make room for the things in my life that really matter. This might be physical possessions, but for me it's also about relationships, friendships, my career, the time I spend outside of work doing what I really love. And I think the decluttering process can really help us to get clear on what's important. It might also help us to reflect on our relationship with buying and consuming, and being more aware of our trigger points to buying things we don't really need. So underlying the decluttering process, for me anyway, is something much deeper, and that is living life in ways that are aligned to the things that are really important to us. Now, although minimalism and decluttering aren't the same thing, there are some important lessons you can learn about yourself through minimalism and the decluttering process. And if you'd like to know the 10 biggest lessons that I learned through decluttering 10 years worth of stuff, then check out the video that's on the screen. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon.